We have 20 minutes, or probably by this point we have 19 and a half minutes. There was once a couple of Menachem who were on Mitzrayim. They saw an older guy, and they said, "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" And he said, "Oh, you're the Lubavitchers, get away from me. I hate Lubavitch." So they said, "Well, how do you even know that? You don't even know what we're really about. You're just judging us based on what you heard." He says, No. I learned in Lubavitch when I was a kid. My parents sent me there. I know exactly what I'm talking about." So they said, "Uh-oh, what happened to him? What kind of negative experience did he have?" So they said, What happened to you in Lubavitch?" He says, "Look, I'm not observant. I do whatever I want. But because of the things they taught me in Lubavitch, I can never completely enjoy it." What does that mean? Person has bechira chofshis. Person has free choice. So learning Chassidus is not going to force you to behave any particular way. You're still going to have to choose how you behave. But it will change the way your brain works. And you won't really be able to get rid of it. So this guy is saying, look, I'm misusing my... he didn't say it like this because he doesn't think he's misusing it, but we can interpret it. Basically, he's misusing his bechira chofshis, he's making choices that are not good for him, which the Eibishter lets us do that. But even as he's making these poor choices, his brain still knows what he learned from Chassidus, and it doesn't allow him to completely enjoy the taivas that he's partaking in. Now, I want to explain to you, in the 17 remaining minutes that I have, to being time conscious, that is, when I say that that's what Chassidus does, I mean that is unique to Chassidus Chabad. I know sometimes we say Chassidus, and we assume we mean Chassidus Chabad, but we have to be specific. And to clarify, we're talking about Chochmah Bina Das, we're talking about the Alter Rebbe's system that he set up, and which continues through all of the Rebbeim, specifically in the Rebbe's Chassidus, which is teaching you how to think. See, contrary to popular belief, not the Rebbe and not Chassidus ever told anybody what to think. Teaches us how to think. It's a way of looking at life. It's an approach. So when we talk about Chabad, we talk about the mind, Chochmah Bina Das, what we really mean is it's a way that your mind works differently. And you see reality differently because of it. Now I want to explain to you that that was not the approach of all Chassidim and of every Chassidus that comes from the Baal Shem Tov. Chassidus Chabad is about changing the way your brain works and changing the way you see reality. But there are other types of Chassidus, they have a different approach. I'll ask you a question. Were you ever in a situation where everybody was excited and you didn't know why, but just the fact that there was excitement going on was itself exciting, and you were able to join in the excitement? It's probably a good description of camp. Just the excitement is exciting, and you don't even have to know why it's exciting. And you get into it. Now, ask yourself another question. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody was passionate about a subject, about an idea, They were excited about telling you about the idea, but you did not understand the idea. You did not understand the idea. And their excitement was not only not exciting, it was frustrating. So let me ask you a question. Why, if everybody's getting excited, and you don't know why they're excited, but just the excitement is itself exciting, why does that work? And when somebody's explaining an idea, and they're excited about the idea, and you don't understand the idea, it's not exciting, it's frustrating. Why do they work so differently? What we're really talking about is the difference between chagas and chabad. Emotions and intellect. The way that emotions work, the advantage of emotions, I'm talking about inspiration. The advantage of inspiration is it's exciting, it's electrifying, you don't have to get it, you don't have to understand it, you don't have to prepare for it, you don't have to be ready for it. All you have to do is just like they say, come on, get into it. Right? When you want somebody to join the excitement, you tell them, get into it. And I think that those words in English tell us a lot about the concept. Get into it. It's like a vehicle. Like a bus. Picks you up and takes you someplace where you can't go on your own. That's what excitement and inspiration does for you. It picks you up and takes you someplace that you cannot go on your own. That's the advantage of it. What's the disadvantage of it? Once the ride is over, they drop you off. You can't make it happen again. In a word, does excitement and inspiration foster dependence or independence? Which one? Dependence or independence? Does it make you independent or makes you dependent?
Dependent.
Dependent. Because basically, it takes you for a ride that you don't know how to make happen on your own. It's fun. You get into it. Literally, you get into it. Takes you for a ride, but then once it drops you off at the curb, it's like, sorry, and then you're standing there at the side of the road like, oh, when is it going to happen again? I don't know how to make it happen. That's what excitement and inspiration does. The advantage is, it definitely is an advantage. The advantage is you don't have to be ready, you don't have to prepare, you don't have to work. Just get into it when it happens. And there is an approach to Yiddishkeit that just says, you know how we're going to be excited about being Jewish? We're going to make an environment that makes you feel excited about being Jewish. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to think deeply about it. You just have to join it, and it'll work for you. In fact, that's the approach called chagas. The approach called chagas Chassidus is to create an environment where Judaism is exciting. Now, what's the downside of that? What happens if you leave the environment? You lose everything. Because it made you totally dependent. All right, take that, put it on a shelf in the back of your brain. All right, let's talk about Chabad. Remember we spoke about if somebody is explaining a concept and you don't understand it, their excitement isn't exciting, it's frustrating. Why is that?
Because you're not able to get into it.
You can't just get into it. That's exactly correct. Because with an idea, you don't get into it, it gets into you. And that's why if I want to understand if you chop an idea, I will ask you, did you get it? Did you get it? Did it go into you? With chagas, inspiration, excitement, you get into it. With Chabad, intellect, information, it goes into you. That's why we say Chabad mont pnimius. Chabad demands internalization. That doesn't mean that Chabad and pnimius are two separate things, that pnimius is the prerequisite for Chabad. It means that this is one and the same thing. If it is Chabad, it is pnimius. In other words, if you heard what I said and understood it, it got into you. You could be part of an exciting environment and nothing got into you. You got into it, fun is over, you're back to who you were. But if information gets in your brain, that gets into you, that changes you. So like the guy, the story that I told you in the very beginning, he said, because of the stuff I learned in Chabad, even though I engage in all my titles, I never completely enjoy it. Now let me ask you a question. What's the disadvantage of Chabad? There definitely is a disadvantage, no question. The disadvantage Well, let's talk about what was the advantage of chagas. What's the advantage of excitement and inspiration? What? Say loud.
It's easy.
It's easy, and how fast does it take? Right away. It's just as soon as you get into it. Color war breakout. Yeah, okay, fine. What's the disadvantage of Chabad? What?
Once you get out of it, you can't go back in. It's hard to get back into it.
That's the disadvantage of Chagas. Something you go into, and it drops you off, and you're back standing at the curb. What's the disadvantage of Chabad? Yeah, say it loud.
Once you get out, you can't go back in.
You don't get into it. I'm explaining this very clear to you. You're not getting into anything. Let me explain something to you. Chabad is not exciting and it's not inspiring. It's not inspiration, it's information. Information has that word in, and the information means, in the form means form to shape. So it shapes you, gets into it, shapes you. And then when you have the information, that turns into transformation and changes who you are. So Chabad doesn't mean you get into anything. Chabad means the idea gets into you. The disadvantage is, and I'm going to say it because we don't have a lot of time, I have about 10 minutes here. The disadvantage is, well, you say boring, I'll give it a different word. It's hard work. Hard work, if you don't feel like working hard, can feel boring. Now the truth is, if you do the work, the excitement that you'll get from an idea is so much more intense and pleasurable than any excitement that you could feel from inspiration that's going on around you. It's much deeper. When you get when you get an idea, when you really toil, look, you can pretend boring, not boring, but everybody knows when you toil to understand a concept and you finally get it and you hop and you have that satisfaction, and you own that piece of information, you understand it, and you can repeat it. That's a very deep pleasure. Now the disadvantage of it is it takes work, takes time, and if you're not feeling like doing work, then yeah, I guess it's frustrating and it's boring. What's the advantage of it? Is that once it gets into you, now wherever you go, you take it with you. So if our approach to Judaism is, let me create an exciting environment where it feels exciting to be Jewish. Okay, that's inspiration, emotional, chagas approach. Then I'm only going to feel that excitement when I'm in that environment. And I can't leave that environment. But if the approach is to internalize information that will change how I look at life, now no matter where I go, no matter how far I go, if that's it, it changed the way I look at life. So what is his kashrus to a Chagas Rebbe and what is his kashrus to a Chabad Rebbe? Based on what I'm saying here. You know this goes back to the time of the Alter Rebbe and the other talmidim Magid. The debate about Tzadik U'Nosi Yichya and Tzadik U'Nosi Yechaya. Does the Rebbe do the work for you or does the Rebbe teach you how to do the work? Well, it makes perfect sense. If the approach is emotions and excitement and inspiration. So the Rebbe's job is to excite you and inspire you. But in order for him to do that, you got to stay close. And if you go away, you're going to lose it. But if the Rebbe's job is to teach you, to give you information, to give you tools. Now, even when you go away from the Rebbe, you never really go away from him, do you? Because wherever you go, you're looking at that place with the eyes that the Rebbe already gave you. So his kashas to a Rebbe of Chagas is to go to the Rebbe's Tish and to be part of the excitement. His kashas to a Rebbe of Chabad is to learn the Rebbe's Torah and then to look at everything else in life from that perspective. And it's the deepest connection there can be with anyone in the whole world. The connection you have to the person who teaches you how to look at life. I have a few more minutes here. Let me share with you a personal anecdote. I was in Florida last week, and I was talking to a group of people there at a Chabad house, and I asked them, what's the difference between they don't know the terms Chabad and Chagas, but I said to them, what's the difference between an inspirational speaker and an informational speaker? I told them that an inspirational speaker's job is if you give him an hour, he gives you an hour of fun and entertainment, and if he's really good, then it's kosher entertainment, it's Jewish themes. You know, you give me an hour of your time and I'll give you an hour of feeling good about being Jewish. I told them, I don't think that's a fair trade. I don't think that's respectful to you. If you give me an hour of your time, well, according to Chabad, that means an approach of pnimius and information and changing the way people think. If you give me an hour of your time, I really have to give you 2 hours, or 10, or 100. How can you give me an hour and I'll give you 100 hours? See, if I'm entertaining you, and you give me an hour, I can only give you 1 hour. An hour of entertainment. And after the entertainment's over, it's over. You know, like when you hear a funny joke, first time it's hilarious, second time it's a little less hilarious, third time it's a little less, till finally it's just not funny anymore. I heard that one, I heard it's an old joke. Entertainment, it wanes with time. But if you share with somebody information that changes how they look at life, then what happens is they apply that later on. It's like you might have an experience where you spent a minute in class listening to something your teacher was saying, and later on in life, that 1 minute is going to give you hundreds and thousands of hours of practical tools in life. Don't doubt it that it'll happen, because it definitely will. Excitement is fun, but once it's over, it's over. Information is not as fun. Okay, I'm going to admit it. But it's a much better return on your investment. If you listen to somebody talk for an hour, you deserve to expect that that hour is going to give you hundreds of hours of practical tools in life. So the only way for that to happen is if the speaker takes a Chabad approach and gives you a perspective, gives you tools, gives you a way of thinking. There's an old Hasidic story about a guy who had a recurring dream his entire life that this was a Jew. He lived in Krakow, Poland, and he had a dream every night that he goes to the big capital of Prague, and there's a palace, and there's in front of the palace there's a river, and over the river there's a bridge. And in his dream he goes to the bridge and he digs under the bridge and he finds his treasure. So after many, many years he decides he's going to go follow his dream. He goes to Prague, he sees the palace just like it always is, he sees the river, the bridge, he starts digging. The non-Jewish guard asks him, "What are you doing?" So he decides, you know what, honesty is the best policy. He says, "Look, it sounds crazy, but every single night of my whole life I have a recurring dream that I go to this place. It looks just like it, the palace, the river, the bridge, and this is where I dig, this is where I find my treasure, and I'm following my dream." And the guard says, "You know what, if everyone were as foolish as you, do you know where I would be? I have a recurring dream every night of my life. I've lived my whole life in Prague, but I always have this dream that I'm in Krakow, Poland, in a city where I've never been. And I'm in the Jewish quarter of that city, which for sure I've never been in. And I'm in this certain house," and he describes the house. And the Yid realizes he's describing his house, and he says, "I lift up the floorboards under the oven, and I find my treasure. But you don't see me going to Krakow, to the Jewish quarter, to that house, and lifting up the floorboards under the oven, finding my treasure." And the Yid says, "Thank you very much. I just remembered I have to be somewhere else." He runs back home, lifts up the floorboards, he finds his treasure. What's the mashal or the nimshal? When we talk about pneumius, or changing the way somebody thinks, teaching someone, really teaching, what we really mean is that the person finds their own treasure. You ever heard about, they talk about it sometimes for teachers. I know it's important to remember there's the difference between they call it the sage on the stage or the guide on the side. One approach of a teacher is the sage on the stage. So the whole lesson is about how smart the teacher is. He gives a good lesson. The guide on the side means it's not about the teacher, it's about the student. The whole point is that the student should change. Real Chabad Chassidus means that the whole point is that the Mekabel should be changed. And that means to find your inner wisdom, your inner clarity, to find the truth, and to be able to see it with your brain. I know sometimes we talk about bittul, and you get the idea that bittul means that you don't know anything, and whoever told you to have an idea, and you have no good ideas, and stop being a smart guy. That's not what bittul means. At all. Bittul doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself less. Just be a little bit less self-absorbed. And when you become less self-absorbed, an amazing thing happens. Your brain works really well. You get clarity. You see truth. You're able to come up with answers to your questions. That's your treasure. In other words, when you're learning Chassidus, it's not about how smart the Rebbe is. First of all, what kind of a chassid even makes such a statement? How smart is the Rebbe? That's not how a chassid talks. Chassidus is about how smart you can become. That it gets into your brain and it changes the way you see things, and you see things more clearly. Jonathan Sachs said, "The Rebbe changed my life without saying or writing a single word." How so? He says, "I wrote to the Rebbe, should I become the next chief rabbi of England? The Rebbe wrote me back on my own paper. The Rebbe took the word should and circled it, took the word I and circled it, then made arrows, switching them. Took the question mark and crossed off the crooked part and left just the dot, and sent it back to him. Now the sentence read, I should become the next chief rabbi of England. That's finding your own treasure. When you go to the Rebbe and you say, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, and the Rebbe says, no, you do know what to do, I'll show you that you do. Do you understand how that's very different than telling somebody what to think? That's teaching them how to think. So when you learn, you should actually feel yourself getting smarter. You should actually feel life becoming more clear to you. And the fact that you have questions, yeah, we all have questions, we all have doubts, we all have confusion. That's a normal part of Elam Hazeh, being in the Shabbat B'Guf, and Befrat, being in Golas. Yeah, we don't see emes automatically as clearly as we would like to. But the fact that you have confusion doesn't mean that you can't trust your own brain and that you should stop thinking. What Chassidus does for you is it teaches you that you're the same guy who's confused, you can be the same guy who has clarity. You're the guy with the question, you're the guy with the answer. Okay, sometimes you need to ask a mashpia, you need to get objective advice. Okay, I'm sure you hear this message. I'm not going to repeat that. Of course, you have to have humility. Humility is teachability. You have to listen to others, especially people with more experience. But right now, I just want to emphasize this one concept, which is learning Chassidus Chabad is really an opportunity to become wise. And to have a very smart way of looking at life and to be able to answer questions that you have. Oh, you have a question. If I have a question, that means I'm confused. No, it means it's a process. You have a question, you'll have an answer. Don't be so afraid of your own confusion and questions. The second that something is unclear to you, don't get scared. It's a process. You work through it. And you realize the same person with the questions is the same person with the answer. I'm sure, this is the last thing I'll tell you, and I think I'm going over time, but I'm sure you all heard at this point the now famous story of Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb. When, I'll tell it very briefly, but he had been to a couple of Fabrengens, that was it. He never met the Rebbe one-on-one, he never wrote to the Rebbe, but he had been to a couple of Fabrengens, just one or two. And then he moved to Silver Spring, Maryland, and he was working as a psychologist by day, and then he was giving Shiurei Torah at night. So he's very respected, he's a professional, he's a talmid chacham, and he had a lot of questions about life, about Yiddishkeit, and he couldn't, you're the answer guy, you can't admit to anyone you're having problems, so he couldn't go to anybody for any hashpah, and it was really eating him up inside, he was depressed about it. So he had one friend he admitted it to, and he says, look, I have questions, I'm supposed to have all the answers, because I'm the psychologist, and I'm the talmid chacham, and I don't know the answer, and the friend said to him, well, go to the Rebbe. So he didn't know any better. He didn't know you have to schedule a Yechidus. He just looked up in the phone book, 770, and he called up the Rebbe's office, and Rabbi Chadukov answered the phone. So he hears in the background, after Rabbi Chadukov answers the phone, he hears in the background a voice saying, Wer ruft, who's calling? And he realizes, because I told you, he'd been to a couple of Fabrengens, so he knew what the Rebbe's voice sounded like. He realized that's the Rebbe's voice. The Rebbe Chadukov is answering the phone, hello, and the Rebbe in the background is saying, Wer ruft, who's calling? Now, he was I told you this, he was very embarrassed of his questions, so he didn't want to say his name. So when Rabbi Chadukov says, who's calling? Rabbi Weinreb said, he left it anonymous. He said, a Yid from Maryland, a Jew from Maryland. That's it. Very, very anonymous. So Rabbi Hanukov says, okay, what are your questions? What do you want? So he spilled his guts, and he said all these things were bothering him, really, really weighing heavy on him. He had all these questions, these doubts, confusion, and he spilled it all out. And each thing that he would say, Rabbi Hanukov would repeat it out loud in Yiddish, so that Rebbe in the background could hear it all. And after he was all finished saying all these things that were troubling him, confusing him, all of his questions, he hears the Rebbe say to him, or say to Rabbi Hanukov, Zogem, as Sedon Maralan de Yid mit Bemen soll reden und sein Namen ist Weinreb. Which means, tell him there's a Jew in Maryland that he should speak to, and his name is Weinreb. Like, Weinreb will help him. So Rabbi Hanukov says, did you hear what the Rebbe said? Weinreb was so shocked, told a little lie. He says, no, I did not hear the Rebbe. He couldn't believe it. He heard the Rebbe, but he couldn't believe it. So Rabbi Hanukov says in English, the Rebbe says, since you're in Maryland, you should speak to this Jew in Maryland. His name is Weinreb. He's good. He'll straighten you out. He has the answers. And Weinreb says, but I am Weinreb. And Rabbi Hanukov says, hold on. He hears in the background, the Rebbe tells Rabbi Hanukov, Ey bezei is aus dem Sorgen es amol, darf man reden mit sich. Let him know that sometimes you have to talk to yourself. So it's an interesting story, and some people ask, is it Ruach HaKodesh? I don't know if it is. Personally, Ruach HaKodesh would be exciting and inspiring, like in a Chagas type of way. But a Chabad way of taking the story would be to take a Heder from it. So what's the Heder? I don't know the Heder. I'll tell you what I got from it. Why I think it's a cool story. I like the story because Weinreb called up, didn't say who he was, just said he was all confused. The Rebbe tells him, well, if you're confused, speak to the guy with clarity. His name was Weinreb. Weinreb says, but I don't have clarity. I'm not the guy who has the answers. I'm the guy who called you with all the questions. I'm the guy who's confused. And if it would have been me getting that call, I don't know what I would have done. I might have told him, oh, you're Weinreb? Oh my gosh. I had heard that Weinreb was so smart, had all the answers. I didn't realize he was such a confused guy like you. I changed my answer. Forget it. Don't talk to Weinreb. Whatever you do, the last thing you should do is talk to Weinreb. He's a confused guy. But the Rebbe heard that, and he didn't back down. He says, oh, you're Weinreb who's confused? Okay, not a problem. Talk to Weinreb who has clarity. You understand what I'm saying? You have questions, you're confused? Okay. But Chassidus Chabad will straighten that out. You'll figure out an answer. And you want to know the most beautiful part of the whole story is Weinreb comments, and he says, by the way, after that happened with the Rebbe, it gave me such confidence. And now, to this story happened 40 years ago. He says, now to this day, if I'm confused, listen to this. He's not a chassid by any stretch. He says, when I'm confused, I open up L'kutei Sichos, and I learn the Rebbe's Torah, close the Sefer, and then my brain starts to think, and I come upon an answer. That is a chassid. The Rebbe is not going to figure it out for you. The Rebbe is not going to solve it for you. But the Rebbe will give you a brain that can solve your own problem. In other words, the Rebbe will introduce you to your own treasure. The Rebbe will show you, the smart you, the guy with the answers. And if I can put it another way, I can put it, the Rebbe will show you the real you. Because the you that has questions is not the real you. Even though he speaks in your head in your own voice. The real you is the you that has real clarity and knows the truth and has good answers. And through his kashus to the Rebbe, and I mean that specifically through learning the Rebbe's Torah and thinking about it, and discussing it, and absorbing it, you get to know the real you, the smart you, the wise you, the clear you, the one who sees truth, who sees things the way they really are. Okay, sorry, thanks.